What if the most powerful healing plants on Earth weren't locked away in pharmaceutical labs or hidden in some remote jungle, but have been growing quietly across the mountains, temple courtyards, and stream beds of Japan for over 1,000 years? While most of the world reaches for synthetic supplements and lab-engineered extracts, Japanese herbalists spent centuries refining a living pharmacy rooted in direct observation and generational testing. Plants with peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled clinical trials now confirming what they already knew. Number 4 has a Cochrane systematic review behind it, the gold standard of medical evidence, showing statistically significant cognitive improvement in patients with dementia. And number 1 was so strategically valuable that feudal warlords posted armed guards around its cultivation sites, and a recent double-blind trial just proved it measurably improves memory in aging adults. Number 10 is shiso, the aromatic leaf that Japanese families have pressed into pickles, wrapped around sushi, and scattered across cold soba noodles for centuries. Known in the West as perilla, this deeply fragrant herb was documented in traditional Kampo medicine texts as far back as the Heian period, roughly 1,000 years ago, where court practitioners prescribed it for respiratory complaints, digestive unease, and seasonal allergies. Farmers in the Kyoto and Nara regions still cultivate entire fields of both red and green shiso varieties today, harvesting them at peak midsummer when the essential oil content reaches its highest concentration. What makes shiso scientifically remarkable is its dense concentration of rosmarinic acid, a polyphenol that acts as a potent anti-inflammatory and anti-allergenic agent. A randomized controlled trial published in Experimental Biology and Medicine found that perilla extract reduced allergic rhinitis symptoms by 30% compared to placebo over a 21-day treatment period. The mechanism involves direct suppression of immunoglobulin E production, which is the antibody responsible for triggering histamine release during allergic reactions. Shiso also contains high levels of luteolin, a flavonoid shown in laboratory research at Kyoto University to inhibit the release of multiple pro-inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Beyond allergy relief, the plant provides meaningful amounts of alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that supports cardiovascular health and healthy inflammatory responses. A Japanese epidemiological study noted that populations regularly consuming perilla oil showed significantly lower circulating levels of C-reactive protein and other inflammatory blood markers over a 5-year observation period. Researchers also observed improvements in the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in participants' red blood cell membranes, a key indicator of systemic inflammatory balance. If you want to incorporate shiso, look for fresh leaves at Asian grocery stores and add them raw to salads, rice bowls, or cold noodle dishes. Cooking destroys much of the volatile oil content that carries the most therapeutic compounds. Number 9 takes us deeper into the Japanese mountains, where ashitaba has grown wild, on the volcanic slopes of Hachijo Island for generations. The name translates to tomorrow's leaf, because when you cut a stem today, a new shoot appears by the very next morning. That astonishing regenerative power made it legendary among isolated island communities who believed the plant contributed to their unusual longevity. Fishermen and farmers on the Izu Islands have eaten ashitaba leaves in miso soups, tempura, and stir-fries for hundreds of years, and Edo-period herbal texts reference it specifically as a vitality tonic prescribed to the elderly. The science centers on a flavonoid called 4,4-dimethylcalcone, commonly abbreviated as DMC. A landmark study published in Nature Communications in 2019 found that DMC activates a fundamental cellular recycling process called autophagy, where damaged proteins and dysfunctional organelles are systematically broken down and cleared from cells. This process naturally declines with age, and its dysfunction is now linked to neurodegenerative diseases, metabolic disorders, and accelerated biological aging. The researchers demonstrated convincingly that DMC extended lifespan in both yeast and roundworm models and protected heart cells in aged mice from oxidative stress-related damage. Ashitaba also contains unique compounds called chalcones, concentrated in the distinctive yellow sap that bleeds from freshly cut stems, which have demonstrated anti-obesity effects in animal studies by upregulating adiponectin, a hormone that governs fat metabolism and insulin sensitivity. A clinical pilot study conducted in Japan showed that participants consuming ashitaba powder daily for 8 weeks experienced a statistically significant reduction in visceral fat area as measured by CT scan. You can find ashitaba as a dried green powder or in capsule form from Japanese supplement suppliers. The most traditional preparation is simply simmering the fresh leaves in hot water as a nourishing tea. And that brings us to number 8, mugwort, or yomogi as it is known in every corner of Japan. Walk through any Japanese countryside in spring and you will see elderly women with woven baskets gathering the silvery green leaves of yomogi from riverbanks, hillsides, and the edges of rice paddies. This plant is woven into Japanese cultural life at a fundamental level. It is the key ingredient in kusamochi, the vivid emerald green rice cakes served during the spring equinox. And for centuries, moxibustion practitioners have burned compressed dried mugwort directly on acupuncture points as a core element of traditional East Asian medicine, a practice still widely used in Japanese clinics today. The primary bioactive compounds in yomogi include eucalyptol and thujone in the essential oil fraction, along with a diverse range of sesquiterpene lactones. A controlled study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that Artemisia princeps extract, the specific Japanese mugwort species, significantly reduced fasting blood glucose levels in diabetic animal models by improving insulin sensitivity at the cellular receptor level, with glucose reductions averaging 18% over the study period. Separate research conducted at Osaka University demonstrated that yomogi extract exhibited remarkable hepatoprotective effects, reducing elevated liver enzyme markers ALT and AST by over 40% in subjects exposed to chemical liver stress agents. The plant also shows meaningful broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, with in vitro studies confirming effectiveness against both Staphylococcus aureus and Escherichia coli at relatively low concentrations. Traditional Japanese households still hang thick bundles of dried yomogi at their doorways during the Tango no Seku festival in May, a centuries-old practice rooted in the plant's demonstrated insect-repelling and air-purifying properties. To incorporate yomogi into your routine, steep dried leaves in hot water for 5 minutes to make a simple herbal tea, or look for yomogi powder to blend into morning smoothies or baked goods. Number 7 is a plant most people walk right past without a second thought. Dokudami, or Houtunia cordata, sometimes called the chameleon plant for its heart-shaped leaves that shift color in different light. In Japan, tea is one of the most widely consumed traditional health beverages, found everywhere from rural grandmothers' kitchens to brightly lit Tokyo convenience stores. The name literally contains the Japanese word for poison, doku, because it was historically regarded as an antidote and powerful detoxifying agent. Kampo medicine practitioners have prescribed dokudami preparations for centuries to treat persistent skin conditions, urinary tract infections, and inflammatory respiratory ailments. And it remains one of the officially recognized crude drugs in the Japanese pharmacopoeia. Modern phytochemical analysis reveals that dokudami contains a volatile compound called decanoyl acetaldehyde, which displays broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. A study conducted at Kyunghee University and published in the Journal of Medicinal Food showed that Houtunia cordata extract suppressed the replication of SARS-related coronavirus strains in vitro by inhibiting viral RNA-dependent RNA polymerase activity at the molecular level. Additionally, the plant is rich in quercitrin, a glycoside form of quercetin that has demonstrated significant diuretic and anti-edema effects in clinical observations, supporting the kidney and urinary system. Research published in Phytotherapy Research found that standardized dokudami extract reduced allergic skin inflammation scores by 25% in a double-blind trial involving subjects with chronic atopic dermatitis over a 4-week intervention period. The flavonoid profile also includes apsalin, which laboratory studies have linked to suppression of melanogenesis, giving the plant a traditional reputation for improving skin clarity and evening out complexion. Dokudami tea bags are widely available in Japanese grocery stores and online retailers. Brew them at moderate temperature, around 80 degrees Celsius, and enjoy daily for the cumulative benefits that traditional practitioners have long observed. Sliding into number 6, we find kuzu, the root of the kudzu vine that blankets hillsides across the warmer regions of southern Japan. While Americans know kudzu as a destructive, invasive weed, choking telephone poles across the southeastern states, the Japanese have cultivated and deeply revered the root for over 1,200 years. Yoshino kuzu, harvested by specialist artisans in the mountains of Nara Prefecture, is considered the absolute finest grade and is processed through a laborious winter washing technique involving repeated cold water soaking cycles that can take several weeks to complete. In Kampo medicine, kakonto, a classical formulation built around kuzu root, remains the single most commonly prescribed remedy for early-stage colds, fever, and stiff necks and shoulders. The key bioactive compound driving scientific interest is porarin, an isoflavone that has become the subject of extensive cardiovascular research worldwide. A meta-analysis covering 14 clinical trials and published in Phytomedicine found that porarin treatment improved cardiac output and significantly reduced angina symptoms in patients with coronary artery disease, with an overall efficacy rate exceeding standard pharmaceutical treatment alone. Oral supplementation studies have separately shown that porarin can reduce systolic blood pressure by relaxing vascular smooth muscle through direct modulation of the nitric oxide signaling pathway. Kuzu root also contains daidzein and isoflavones that interact with estrogen receptors and have shown measurable protective effects on bone mineral density in postmenopausal women in a randomized trial, published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Traditionally, kuzu starch is dissolved in cold water and then gently heated while stirring until it forms a warm, translucent, silky gel. This soothing preparation, called kuzuyu, is given to people recovering from illness or surgery as a gentle food that calms and protects the digestive tract. Number 5 is one that carries a deep spiritual resonance throughout Japanese culture: matcha, the stone-ground powdered green tea that Buddhist monks brought from Song Dynasty China in the 12th century and gradually refined into the meditative art of chanoyu, the Japanese tea ceremony. Zen monks at Kyoto's Great Temple, complexes like Daitokuji and Nanzenji, relied on matcha to sustain calm, unwavering alertness through hours of rigorous seated meditation, and the Muromachi period shogunate elevated tea preparation into one of the highest art forms in Japanese civilization. Unlike steeped green tea, where leaves are discarded, matcha involves consuming the entire ground leaf, which concentrates its bioactive payload dramatically. The compound that truly sets matcha apart is L-theanine, an amino acid that crosses the blood-brain barrier and promotes alpha-wave activity in the brain, the distinct neural pattern associated with a state of relaxed yet focused attention. A randomized crossover study published in Nutritional Neuroscience found that subjects consuming matcha showed significantly improved attention task performance and faster reaction time compared to placebo, without the jittery side effects associated with coffee. Matcha also delivers epigallocatechin gallate, known as EGCG, at roughly 3 times the concentration found in standard brewed green tea. The large-scale Osaki National Health Insurance cohort study, involving over 40,000 Japanese adults tracked across 11 years, found that regular green tea consumption was associated with a 26% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality. The catechins in matcha additionally support metabolic health by measurably enhancing thermogenesis and fat oxidation during moderate exercise, as confirmed in research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. For maximum benefit, whisk ceremonial-grade matcha in water heated to around 75 degrees Celsius, using a traditional bamboo chasen. Boiling water rapidly degrades the delicate catechins and significantly diminishes L-theanine content, so temperature control truly matters with this plant. That scientific depth only increases with number 4, ginkgo, the ancient tree that has survived virtually unchanged for over 200 million years, earning it the singular title of living fossil. Ginkgo biloba trees line the grand boulevards of Tokyo and Osaka, their distinctive fan-shaped leaves turning brilliant gold each autumn in displays that draw thousands of visitors. and the species holds enormous cultural significance in Japan, where individual ancient specimens are formally designated as national natural monuments. Buddhist temples across Kyoto and Kamakura have tended ginkgo trees for centuries, and the nut of the ginkgo, called ginan, is a prized seasonal ingredient in chawan mushi, the delicate savory steamed custard. The pharmacological profile centers on two key compound groups, terpene trilactones, including ginkgolides A, B, and C, and a suite of flavone glycosides, including camphorol and isohamnotin derivatives. A Cochrane systematic review evaluating over 30 randomized controlled trials found that standardized ginkgo extract at doses of 120 to 240 milligrams per day produced statistically significant improvements in cognitive function, behavioral symptoms, and daily living activities in patients with mild to moderate dementia. The primary mechanism involves inhibition of platelet activating factor by ginkgolide B, which directly improves microcirculation through cerebral blood vessels. Separate, well-designed clinical trials have demonstrated that ginkgo extract meaningfully improves peripheral blood flow, reducing symptoms of intermittent claudication, a painful condition where narrowed leg arteries restrict walking, with one trial reporting a 25% increase in pain-free walking distance over a 6-month treatment period. Ginkgo also exhibits significant neuroprotective effects through its broad antioxidant capacity, efficiently scavenging free radicals in vulnerable neural tissue. Look for standardized extract containing 24% flavone glycosides and 6% terpene trilactones. This precise formulation is used in the vast majority of positive clinical trials. Number 3 turns from leaves to bark, specifically the bark and foliage of the Japanese cedar known as sugi. Cryptomeria japonica has been the single most important timber tree in Japan for over 1,000 years, forming the towering ancient groves surrounding Nikko's sacred Toshogu shrine and creating the famous 400-year-old cedar-lined avenue of Togakushi. Forestry workers laboring in these dense groves have long observed that spending extended time among sugi trees seemed to noticeably improve their respiratory health, mood, and overall sense of vitality. Observations that eventually became the scientific foundation of Shinrin-yoku, the Japanese practice of forest bathing that has since spread worldwide. The essential oil released continuously by sugi bark and foliage into the surrounding air is particularly rich in terpenes, most notably alpha-cedrine and cedrol. A controlled clinical study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health found that inhalation of cedrol vapor significantly reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 8 millimeters of mercury and lowered salivary cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, by 28% compared to an unscented control environment. The autonomic nervous system shifts measurably toward parasympathetic dominance during cedar exposure, meaning the body physically transitions out of the fight-or-flight stress response and into a state of deep rest and cellular recovery. Additional groundbreaking research from Chiba University's Forest Medicine Research Program demonstrated that exposure to sugi-derived phytoncides increased human natural killer cell activity by over 50%, an immune-boosting effect that remarkably persisted for more than 7 days after just a single 3-hour forest visit. Natural killer cells are a critical frontline component of innate immunity and play a direct role in identifying and destroying both tumor cells and virus-infected cells throughout the body. You do not need to live near a Japanese cedar forest to access these benefits. Pure sugi essential oil diffused in a bedroom or living space for 2 hours has been shown in controlled studies to replicate many of these autonomic and immune-enhancing effects in ordinary indoor settings. Number 2 takes us into the world of compo herbal formulation, where sojutsu, the rhizome of Atractylodes lancea, has anchored digestive medicine for over 500 years. Classical compo texts from the Edo period describe sojutsu as the supreme herb for strengthening the spleen and resolving dampness, a traditional diagnostic framework that maps remarkably well onto what modern gastroenterology calls functional dyspepsia and gastroparesis. This knobby, aromatic rhizome was so highly valued by Edo period herbalists that the finest specimens from the mountains of central Honshu commanded extraordinary prices at medicinal markets in Osaka and Kyoto. The primary bioactive constituents isolated from sojutsu are atractylodin and beta-udesmol, both potent compounds with distinct pharmacological actions. A landmark multi-center randomized controlled trial published in Gastroenterology, one of the highest impact peer-reviewed journals in digestive medicine, found that Rikenshitou, the classical kampo formulation anchored by sojutsu alongside herbs like ginger and ginseng, significantly improved the full spectrum of functional dyspepsia symptoms, including early satiety, postprandial bloating, nausea, and upper abdominal discomfort compared to placebo over an 8-week treatment course. The key mechanism involves direct stimulation of ghrelin secretion, the hunger hormone that regulates gastric motility, appetite signaling, and gut-brain communication. Plasma ghrelin levels increased by a measured 17% in the active treatment group compared to baseline. Further clinical research published in Neurogastroenterology and Motility demonstrated that the formulation measurably accelerated gastric emptying time in patients diagnosed with diabetic gastroparesis, a debilitating condition where the stomach fails to propel food forward at a normal rate. Separately, sojutsu extract has shown potent anti-inflammatory effects in intestinal epithelial cell cultures by directly suppressing activation of NF-kappa B, a master transcription factor that regulates dozens of inflammatory gene pathways. This rhizome is traditionally consumed as part of the standardized Rikenshitou granule formulation available at kampo pharmacies throughout Japan and increasingly through international supplement retailers specializing in traditional Japanese medicine. And now, number 1, the plant that stands above every other entry on this list, both in cultural weight and in the sheer breadth of its scientific validation. This is wasabi, real wasabi, Wasabia japonica, not the bright green horseradish and dye paste that fills plastic packets at sushi restaurants around the world. Authentic wasabi has been cultivated in the pristine cold mountain streams of Japan's Izu Peninsula, Nagano Prefecture, and Shimane region since at least the 10th century, when it was reserved exclusively for nobility and the ruling warrior class. Samurai carried dried wasabi root as a field antiseptic, pressing it directly into battle wounds to prevent infection during military campaigns, and its cultivation sites were considered strategic assets guarded by local lords. The plant demands extraordinarily specific growing conditions, continuously flowing, crystal-clear water between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius, consistent dappled shade from forest canopy, and mineral-rich volcanic soil, which is why genuine wasabi remains one of the most expensive agricultural crops on Earth, often exceeding $200 per kilogram at market. The compound responsible for wasabi's immediate sinus-clearing heat is allyl isothiocyanate, but the deeper pharmacological significance lies in a unique isothiocyanate called 6-methylsulfonyl-hexyl isothiocyanate, abbreviated as 6-MSITC. This compound has demonstrated remarkable and broad anti-inflammatory potency across multiple studies. A peer-reviewed investigation published in Toxicology and Applied Pharmacology found that 6-MSITC inhibited cyclooxygenase 2 expression, the exact same inflammatory enzyme targeted by widely prescribed drugs like ibuprofen and celecoxib, at concentrations realistically achievable through normal dietary intake. A separate randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that daily supplementation with standardized wasabi extract significantly improved both short-term and working memory scores in healthy older adults over a 12-week intervention period. The researchers attributed this notable cognitive benefit to the compound's demonstrated ability to reduce oxidative stress markers and suppress chronic low-grade inflammation in hippocampal neurons, the brain region most critical for memory consolidation and new learning. Beyond cognitive enhancement, 6-MSITC has shown potent anti-cancer activity in laboratory studies, suppressing proliferation of human gastric cancer cell lines through selective activation of apoptotic pathways, while leaving normal healthy cells unharmed. Wasabi also contains unique antimicrobial compounds that scientifically explain the ancient Japanese practice of pairing fresh wasabi with raw fish. It actively inhibits the growth of dangerous foodborne pathogens, including Helicobacter pylori, the bacterium responsible for the vast majority of stomach ulcers worldwide. To experience genuine wasabi, seek out fresh rhizomes from specialty Japanese suppliers and grate them finely on traditional sharkskin or ceramic graters immediately before eating. The active isothiocyanates begin degrading within 15 minutes of exposure to air, so freshness is absolutely critical. These 10 plants represent something extraordinary. An entire culture that spent centuries observing nature with patience, testing botanical preparations across generations, and building a system of plant medicine so refined that modern laboratories keep confirming what Japanese healers understood long ago. Which plant surprised you most? The cellular recycling power of ashitaba, or the immune-boosting cedar that launched a global wellness movement? Drop your answer in the comments, hit like, and subscribe so you never miss what we uncover next.